Okay. Couple things. I guess I'll start with beating Inscryption.
You beat it!
Yes.
I did not beat it.
Okay. Uh, and I would like to discuss with full spoiler blast.
Let's do it.
Yep, I'm gonna put a visual little warning up, and
Oh,
Inscryption.
I like that. You should just take off the inscription word, and then you can just use that for anything.
Well,
Or
yeah,
you
but
probably
but it helps to tell people what the thing
yeah.
specifically
So
is
when
going
people
to be.
come in, they're like, ah.
Exactly. So,
All right.
Inscryption spoilers are going to begin, and you can come back later if you want to avoid that,
All right. Let's hear your thoughts
or
after beating inscription,
or fast forwarding further.
as it were.
Okay. Spoilers start. Um. So, Act 1 is fantastic,
Act One's incredible.
and where I left off was getting into the videos.
You're on the border.
Yes,
of Act
exactly. The introduction to a meta layer, a live action, a person that you're playing as a person who's playing the game, the card game, and I was like, okay, I don't like that. I don't mind a layer removed, but I'm like, we're watching these skits. What's going on here? And then Act 2 begins. The sequence by which you get through Act 1, you get the special eye, you walk around and do stuff. That's cool. I like all that.
Yeah.
Get the film. Right. Awesome.
Beat him in his own game, turn him into a card, nail it.
Absolutely. Right. Final battle, etc. And then you're getting just like the hang of how to make your cards like super busted as well.
Yeah.
Fun.
The time that I beat him, I beat the piss out of him. Like, it was not like...
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Crushed, in fact, and like after, I think like the first time I did it around, I just had a bunch of insanely busted flying cards that were nuts. And then the second time I had a one touch of death card that you just bite the moon and the moon dies in one bite. Like,
Yeah, I won with some powerful flying cards that couldn't be attacked, and just every turn they would just attack the health of whatever I was fighting, and there was no card game at that point. It was damn.
Okay, so that Act 2 begins, and it is the 8-bit or 16-bit world where you're walking around and having kind of like a Pokemon card duels.
Where it opens up 3 different sets of new cards.
Yes. And I basically was like, okay, this is not what I was looking for. I mean, I'm not going to say what I signed up for, because I just went in like expecting anything, but it's not what I was looking for. And but I was like, all right, let's go with this. And I basically, it was interesting because it introduces a bunch of new decks and mechanics, which I kind of read and went, I'm going to stick with what I know.
So I picked the skeleton deck.
Okay.
And couldn't get back to Leshy's deck fast enough.
Yeah. So it's interesting in that I think that's intentional, because it feels, I don't know how it goes if you decide to like lean hard into the more obtuse decks, the P3 deck, or the the all the weird shit going on with the cubes and the colors and stuff. But I went back, I was kind of like, I'm going to go with what I know here, and then like I picked him to be the replacement. At least the system of bones was introduced to you beforehand, so you can get a hand on
Which
that.
is why I picked that one. I'm like, oh, I kind of get it, but I know the bone mechanic.
But the wizard and computer decks, like I'm like, I'm gonna have to fight enemies seeing how they use this to learn it, because I just don't get it. Now
that we're spoiler talking, some of what I said in the past will come to make more sense. I used the Leshy deck to get more bone stuff, and I ended up using bone for most of that section. And every time I got the wizard or the robot decks, I tried pieces of them and was like, I hate this.
Yeah.
Especially especially hate the robot deck. God, I'm never going to use the robot deck. I
Yeah.
hate it.
Yeah. So that was the thing, is like, I'm like, these others, this other style of game, and there's 4 styles. I'm like, that's interesting. And there's a connection between some of the cards on, like, obviously you get bones for killing sacrificing beasts, and bones can be useful if you're going with a bone build, and there's interaction between them if you'd like, where some things can allow you to 2-color, basically. So I was like, I can see this is probably well thought out, but as someone who's not a hard card enthusiast, and I feel like this game would land super hard if you're really into like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh and all of these things.
I'm seeing people say that it's like there's a meta narrative about tabletop gaming and the differences between the way companies build their games, which doesn't mean shit to me because I don't play card games that often.
So as a non-card gamer, I could feel a lot of that going over my head, especially towards the end. But yeah. So the second act though was like, all right, yeah, sure, let's go with this, and then more of the skits got introduced, and I was like, okay, I'm really the most checked out of the live action bits, like,
yeah,
but I'm following along, and that's what it is. So I'm kind of going through that. Then the end of Act 2, it comes upon you, and then bam, Act 3 begins, and I'm like happy to be back in that style of game.
Yeah, I agree. I also agree with you. That was my initial reaction.
And I'm gonna guess, as you went in and you realized, oh, this is the PO3 version of that game, you're now stuck with that deck.
Miserable.
Yeah, okay.
I gave up. I
Okay.
got like 2 zones in, and I'm like, I hate using these fucking cards. I don't get the synergy for them.
Mm-hmm.
I want my old fucking deck of cards back.
So I was confused, but I just kept with it and got the hang of it eventually. I completely misunderstood the concept of energy and how it worked initially, as well as like what would increase it versus what would replenish it, but just kept going and got the hang of it, and then eventually I was fine with that. I still much prefer the Leshy system in the Meleshi deck, but I got the hang of this and then kept going with it, right? And then you go through that, and then it gets, and then you kind of realize, like, as you're going through that map in Act 3, it's just a shorter, like, lazy version of what you just did in Act 2, because PO3 doesn't care, Right. He's just kind of like, rah, play the game, do whatever, who cares, great, da-da-da. And what made it really fun was the point at which, like, there's a point in that third act where PO3 goes, oh, you think you didn't have fun with that? Is this not, you're not enjoying it? You think you're so good? Here, then, you make a fucking card, and then they give you a card maker, and I was like, okay, and I designed my own card, and then, like, you get to use that, and then you can basically look at, like, and then I took a while looking at that, because I'm like, oh, like, if you're paying attention, you can make game breaking cards, and the game is totally okay with you busting it open at that point, and I was like, oh, this is okay. And that's when I was like, okay, this is kind of really interesting, because, like, there's that boss fight, there's a boss fight where you, like, set your own rules because you're connected to the internet at a point, and you get a card.
I didn't get that far.
Like, there's a whole thing going on that is like, no, we're encouraging you to bust this card game open, kind of the way you did at the end of Act 1, and that was pretty fun. So, I mean, if we're doing full spoilers, I'm going to go past where you...
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so...
I'm never going to get past that robot thing, because every time I upgraded a card, the game would tell me, by the way, if this card dies at any point, it's gone forever.
Okay, so...
Which made me never use them.
Yeah.
Which made the game impossible.
I remember, so here's the thing that I didn't, like, from playing Fights in Tight Spaces, I remember being introduced to the idea of like one of these paths you picked that you went to is a card disposal thing where you'll trade in a card, destroy it, and get stuff back, right? You might think that sounds terrible, but trust me, you'll want to destroy cards. It'll make you more consistent, you know? And I was like, okay. And then I realized it's like, no, it's true. Like, even if you like all your cards, getting rid of some that are weaker means that the better ones will show up more often, and that there is a means of like getting a consistent type of deck that comes from discarding stuff, you know? So I was then looking at the cards that I was like, what's going to instant kill or whatever. I was like, okay, I'll put that on a card I don't necessarily want and use that to hone the consistency of my deck, you know? But it can be helpful to get rid of some cards. So yeah, and then it goes into some other fun stuff.
I don't understand. I don't like why are
okay,
because the thing that I dealt with was I upgrade a card, and once it's upgraded, it says if this card just dies, it's gone forever.
Yes.
Why would I want my good cards to disappear forever?
Well, so that's the thing, is the way I looked at that, because like you can pick good cards and make them better, but I was like, I don't want to risk losing a card forever that I really care about. And earlier, not only from the previous, like the game I mentioned, Fights in Tight Spaces, but in this game too, PO3 tells you may think getting rid of a card sucks, but trust me, you want to get rid of cards to make your deck more consistent. So I upgraded a card I didn't care about as much to be the one that can be killed on death and permanently removed, so that if it did get permanently removed, I wouldn't mind. Because there's another upgrade path that is not it permanently dies path, but a trade in a card for upgrade for materials, and completely sacrifice a card option. So so basically, the act of getting rid of a card is not necessarily a bad thing.
But why would I upgrade my bad cards? I upgraded all of my good ones.
And the way I thought about it was, I'm gonna upgrade the bad card so that I can get rid of it or succeed again in the mission and not mind that it's lost. Otherwise, I'm holding a good card in my hand that I'm too afraid to play because I don't want it to die.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Right, so I didn't do that.
But okay, say I realized that, but I had already done it. What am I supposed to do then?
I have no idea. I don't know. I think that...
Because, like, I still have a save file active, and people are giving me this advice, including you, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm going to go back and just lose?
Well, again, the further in you go, it doesn't get harder. It actually gets easier because of the things I'm talking about, where it tells you literally go make a card. Okay, create some bullshit. Create a system that, like, you know, create a rule set that, like, breaks the system in some way if you can. So losing a strong card on your save right now would suck, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. You could progress further into the game, for sure. But anyway, that's how I treated it. I treated it as a glorified get rid of a card machine. So you go.
Understand. I feel so stupid. I don't understand. But like, because like I was playing without the good card that I had upgraded because I didn't want it to die, and could not beat the. I tried like 20, 30 times.
Was it like your double gunner or so?
It was the fisherman.
The fisherman card. Okay.
The angler.
Yeah. The angler. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so if I died, like if I lost that card, then you and other people say like, oh, there's a lot of good ways to get replacement cards. Like, not unless I am able to keep going forward.
And he's also like a lore card too. That talks.
Like,
so
the way that thing works, I can't just go reset the whole PO3 section to neutral.
I don't know if you can chapter select at that point, There's a chapter select that comes after New Game
Oh, I
on New Game
definitely
Plus.
didn't have it at the part that I am at.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know because you have a card like you don't want to get. I wouldn't want to get rid of the talking cards just to see what they say from a content dialogue point of view. Um, yeah, you would basically be forced to push on and like get lucky hands, I guess, or good items, right? Because the table items can also help like delete some fights in that mode.
I've seen a lot of folks saying that like you can just get those cards back, and like I genuinely don't know how. How are you supposed to get any cards back at all? Every card that I can remember getting, I got from like a item, like a chest in the PO3 zone, right? Or like a reward from like a battle.
There are like money based purchases cards you can go buy. There are some randomized like rewards, so you can try and see what happens. Because the truth is what you're describing. I don't know how to get around that necessarily. I'm just saying what I did.
People are saying that there's a shop to buy cards, and I don't remember that at all.
There's
it's
dollar store
that it is after the part that I'm at.
So there's dollar store rooms that you can walk into, and it'll ask you to buy whatever of these things around you for the money you have. And sometimes, and there are different types of upgrades. Like you can click on the beast paw to get it flips between a beast and its normal function, or get a new card or whatever, like all the different types of upgrades. Like you'll walk into shops that'll be pick one of these things and spend the money on it. So I think that would be your best bet. Try the shops. I think there's a shop in each area too. So there's at least like 3 or 4 of them you can do. But anyway, that's a bit of a side because like so you kind of push that you get past that point, and then you get to the point where like I said, the game is practically encouraging you to break it. You design your own boss fight rules for one. You design your own card for another. Someone uploads a card and sends you one. You send them a card. It's just, and literally, like I made like a super card that was like floats above everything, does the Mantis God triple strike, or does the split strike or whatever, but expensive cost. And then you kind of are like, wait, hold on. How about a free card that has no play requirement and gives you a new card on death and always returns to your hand? Oh, I get a free card every time I hammer this, right? So you just play until you see a card you want appear in your hand, and you always play the perfect card, So you kind of get into that, and then you like that's like a fun like breaking of the game that happens, and then that whole segment continues onward, and then you go back to some of the narrative of like the characters earlier, Leshy and the crew. You do some backroom shit, and like they get reintroduced, and it's pretty awesome. Like it's a nice reveal of like they're around, and like you're gonna now take on PO3. And then basically you go into the end game sequence, which is like you're playing as I forgot his name, Carter or whatever, the live action guy, and you're basically deleting the disc, and you're trying to stop it from uploading itself onto the internet, which is the Great Awakening, which will allow you to, which will allow it to like replicate itself and sell itself on Steam, take the screenshots, etc. And in the process of like the game deleting itself, you then enter the world of the bone cards, the bone deck, and the death lady, and you quickly, like while the game is like wrapping up because you've already triggered the delete sequence, you start a Act 1 and Act 3 style version of her game with the bones. And it's another fun system of like, oh, this is interesting. We could have had a whole adventure here if you liked Act 1 and you wanted to play the one-on-one table versions of these, like, of the game, which is what to me when it's at its best compared to like say Act 2. You get
I would have much rather had a table version against the Death Lady than the robot.
Yeah, it was really brief because it's like, hey, we could have had a lot of fun, but we're deleting ourselves, but this is what it would have been like, kind of thing. And you play a couple rounds of that, and it is pretty fun. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then as that goes, then the only one left is your final, the wizard deck, and you're like, okay, I hate this fucking wizard deck. I don't understand it. And you're forced to kind of like when I beat the wizard in the Act 2, I didn't even really know the rules. I was just
I don't understand it at all.
Yeah, I filled my deck up with like colorful cards, and I just played them, and it was fine. Like I just brute forced through, and I was like, I don't even get, but whatever. So then when it comes back around to now the fully like 3D version of that, where you're like having the 1v1 with them, you get a fun little reveal where like it's like the wizard battle is you put on a fucking Yu-Gi-Oh arm blade, and then you elevate into 2 pillars, and then the monsters you play on the field on your board on your arm appear in the battlefield in between you, and you're having a Yu-Gi-Oh battle, and the numbers of your HP are floating in the sky, and I was like, okay, I'm not into Yu-Gi-Oh, but that's a fun thing, that you dropped there.
That's cool.
And you're playing that Mox based game, which is still least favorite of the set, but you're having a little brief Yu-Gi-Oh battle for a couple rounds until it starts deleting and everything, the narrative comes through, and then the whole game world gets deleted, so I was like, all right, I like the different versions of Act 1 that we went through, and while Act 3 was initially confusing, sticking with it kind of like, and then getting to the point where I realized it was like less about the rules and more about breaking them, I was like, okay, this is fun. And then it wraps up with the final live action bits, which I gotta say, like, as much as like I didn't like them, the final one does its job, which is the game deletes itself. The game process deletes itself. He pops the disc out and destroys it, whatever, and then gets a ring on the doorbell from like the lady who came to visit earlier,
right?
And he walks to the door and goes like, "I told you I don't want," and then she just blows his head off, and then you get your credits, And I was like, okay, well, all right, that's that's the end of your narrative. It's done. In the end, it won me back, like I liked what it did going into that finale, and like those other versions of the game, it does a job. It does its job of kind of being like, hey, you can have enough. It's not so brief that you don't get to enjoy it. You get to enjoy a few rounds of that, and I still like Leshy's the best, but all in all, I liked it. I liked what it did. The turnaround at the end won me back over, despite confusion in the middle. As for what you're describing, though, I don't necessarily know.
I'm still sitting here just baffled. I don't understand a single thing that we talked about with that chapter. All I can think of is, how am I supposed to get new cards if I've already gotten all of the chests and done all of the battles?
Have you unlocked all of the zones in Act 3? Including
no, I only got to like the second one, and immediately started to hit roadblocks.
Okay.
I couldn't cross a bridge to the north side of the map.
Yeah, you don't get... So that one tells you go fight a boss, I think, and then come back.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to explore a bit more. Also, something that I noticed was when you're walking around the map in Act 3, there are invisible arrows.
Yeah, I found all of those.
Okay.
All the ones that I could access.
Yeah. So then I guess it comes down to just like making it through a fight and getting some money to go to.
No, I guess there was a shop, but all I can remember is there were like 3 things to buy, and I didn't want any of them.
Okay.
Unless people are suggesting that the actual solution of the problem that I'm having is to buy up everything at the shop and then go and constantly reset all the fights to just buy as many cards as I want, and then use the upgrade machine to destroy all the cards that I don't want.
I don't feel like you would need to do that. And I know that it tells you use items liberally because you get them back, especially when you reload. Um,
What are you
so
talking about?
or the items on the table.
Yeah.
So using those to get through some of the fights
But
might
what do you
help
mean reload?
So when you get to a new checkpoint, I believe you get like you get the energy re-up battery, for example. I think you get one of those back at the checkpoint. So like using items, not like hoarding items, is not going to pay off because you're going to get them back more generously, so you can afford to use them throughout the fights in each zone. Then some of them can help you win key plays, like forcing a pass on a turn where you'd get killed is like a really good one, for example. So I kind of think you'd have to like just like brute force past like one battle using items and using what you have on you. Go buy another card or two, and then like you'll come into some easier battles. Probably, I'm guessing, you know.
I'm in a state of I could do that. I could go back and just ask for advice until I get past it, and then my reward
it's annoying
is
that
more shitty robot fights.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But that's what I liked about that was just like going into the robot that act, like the rules of that, like as you hit each boss, start to become less and less relevant because it becomes more about like, I guess, the narrative they're going for, but you're still having fun with the cards in a way. Anyway, that's all really. But no, I did like Inscryption, and I thought that so you start a new game and then like there's a chapter select, so you can go back to each section depending on what you want to do. But I thought the meta stuff, like they figured it out. They brought it back. I guess I don't know how you would do that live action bit without. I don't know what the alternative would be.
Live action is cringe.
It is, and I don't know how to make that work. Maybe if you did it without actually cutting to live action and it was just like the dialogue of the player. But even then, it's, like if you did a bit of like I'm thinking of like almost like a beginner's guide kind of thing, but I don't know. But it's the part I would say that I was the most like turned off by. And the final stinger was like, all right, I'm not gonna hate on that. Like that worked out for what the rest of the game was doing. But those sequences I was describing where you get to sit across in 1v1, you get to duel with each of the four afterwards. Like I was like, those are fucking great. I really like that, So yeah, that's my feelings on Inscryption.
Have you tried out Casey's mod yet?
No.
So that's I think it's in like the beta branch or something like that, where they're expanding on part 1 of the game.
Cool.
To be a full thing.
Wait, you told me about that. Yes, right. Yeah.
Because
it's good enough.
The overwhelming response is, yeah, that other stuff was cool though, but I still just want more of the first part.
Exactly. The narrative you made is a fun thing. However, this is a card game I like playing. I want more of that. And it's also the type of game that like works. It fits nicely into that genre for me, where I'm like, I want Into the Breach or I want Bumbo. I want a game where I can just like listen to a podcast, click, and just like go through something and like build a deck and have fun with that rule set. Like I enjoy that style of game, and I had a definite like desire for that right now. So I would love an expanded version of the first act. That'd be fantastic.
Man, I really wish there was a full thing of Grimora's section. That bums me out.
It's like the way you move about the board in her section is just like a chessboard on the map, and then like you piece by piece and you bump into someone and then you start a new fight, and then like you put the bones down and then the skeletons come out and knock the board and stuff. It's cool. It's cool to see Grimora's, yeah. In any case, though, very interesting, unique game out of nowhere. And yeah, didn't know at all that the creator had previously done meta type things. So This is dope. This is dope. And
so one of the more interesting things is that if you go to the Steam page right now, the featured trailer does have live action in it.
Oh.
And I think that is a response to the kind of emotion you're describing.
I didn't sign up for this. What the fuck is happening?
Where now they're like, hey, you can see.
No, it helps to know what comes past that, and I'm glad that I did push through. But yeah, this is something that might be interesting to visit. Maybe down the line, I was thinking maybe this might be fun if Reggie checks it out. But I also know that Reggie's super not into card games. But yeah, it's good.
I don't know if I'm into card games. I played so much goddamn Runeterra, but then I do the robot section and I feel like the dumbest motherfucker in the world.
I play enough Teppen that I can't not be at this point. I have to accept
your rank is too high in Teppen.
I have to accept that I'm clearly into some form of card games.
Yeah, you're too good at it.
Yeah, Inscryption good. All right, end of spoilers.
Goodbye, spoiler warning.